But ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the Raw recap, the new WWE Undisputed Champion, Sami Zayn. And we thank you for joining us. How good does it feel, Sami Zayn, to be announced as the undisputed WWE champion?
I'm still processing it a lot, believe it or not. It's kind of hard to fully take in. But I guess if I had to answer it in one word, it feels just great. It really does. It feels like the weight of the world's off my shoulder. I think anyone who's paid attention has seen that I kind of drove myself to the edge of sanity a little bit there for a while, just by putting so much pressure on myself to win this thing. And it's here, and I feel like I can just breathe. Feels great.
How important is it, too, that of the two championships, the WWE Undisputed Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship, that it happens to be that one that's on your shoulder? I mean, a lot of us were there, years ago in 2023 when we thought that might be the moment. And then there was this reality that sunk in that it was like, oh no, what if that was it? What if that's as close as we're ever going to get with Sami Zayn? For you to all these years later be back and to have that title, is there a special significance?
I mean, 100%, but I'll be honest, I didn't lose the faith, and I certainly didn't lose the faith after the match in Montreal. I thought, well, that I'm not going to say it was a it was a heartbreaker, no doubt. Okay. But I thought, this is the closest I've come, so I'll just get closer and closer till I get there. The one that really did my head in a little bit was coming up short against Drew this past January at the Royal Rumble. Because after that one, that's when I was already starting to feel, I felt like maybe I had missed my window. And I couldn't give up faith, but it was the first time my faith was shook. It was, if I'm being totally honest, I knew I had the talent. I knew I had everything. I knew I was just as good as any of these guys, Drew, Roman, Cody, Seth. And the proof is, you've seen me mix it up in the ring with all of them. You've seen my body of work. There's no question in my mind that, these are my peers. And that's almost what made it more maddening, is why them and why not me? Why is it so close and I just can't get my hands on it? And after losing at the Rumble, that's where I think you saw me kind of losing it or crashing out backstage over the months. It's because I think what was happening was maybe the realization was going on deep down that maybe I'd missed that window. And I was starting to see the sea change with Trick, and the fans getting behind Trick, and they were kind of moved on from my story. And they were into Oba and Javon and Braun Breaker. And there was like this idea that, oh my God, it's like their window is opening, and I think mine might have closed. And I'm only saying this now. I'm only kind of realizing it now that this is actually on my shoulders. But I think that's a big reason why I was slipping. I was slipping. But I'm really proud of myself for never changing, for staying true to my guns, and I think the biggest thing is the way I won it. That's a really big deal to me. I didn't cheat. I didn't, knock out a referee. There was nothing nefarious about it. I rolled him up with the wrestling hold, and I won. In the middle of the ring, just like I said 10 years ago, when I said I'm going to win this the right way. And I did. And so I'm immensely proud of myself for that.
Yeah, and you also pinned the champion in a triple threat, which is, again, one of those little things that you can do where, like, you win, but you don't really win. You got the little loophole here. Right. Did you?
Yeah. And look, I know Cody and my friendship has kind of fractured a little bit over the last few months as well. And maybe I'm, partially to blame for some of that, but he is still Cody Rhodes. And, I call him the golden boy, and I know that kind of maybe rubs him the wrong way, but to me, that's a huge honor to be the golden boy, the chosen one, the guy who's QB1. He's the guy. He's the guy to beat. He's the guy who the entire company is kind of hitched to his wagon. So for him to be the one that I beat, and I won't lie, there were some personal reasons that made it extra satisfactory, and we don't need to get all into that now. But the fact that it was Cody Rhodes that I pinned, there is some poetry there. There is. And, maybe we can explore that more one day. I don't think now's the time for it, but it was special. It was special to beat him.
Well, when you talk about poetry too, it's like I think that there's something so unique about this moment and this version of you, the last real good guy, being the one who got the WWE championship, because even though like, and I'm sure it was very special winning it in Riyadh where you had the entire audience on your side and you got that ovation and you got that moment. But the reality is that in 2023, maybe even in 2024, it felt like no matter where you were, the fans were on your side. And it feels like now, in a very real way, you've become a polarizing figure with a lot of fans. And there are a lot more fans now, I think, that were casting that doubt on you. For you to be kind of telling that same story of this guy who, just like you said, since 2023, I keep trying. But then not only feeling like new wrestlers coming in and the Trick Williams of the world coming in and going like, ooh, maybe this new wave is here, but feeling that fans are starting to kind of lose that sort of Sammy's our guy spirit. Is that something that affected you here?
100%. And I think I really only pieced it together now once the weight of the world came off my shoulders and was replaced with the weight of this championship gold. That's when I kind of realized how damaging that last loss at the Rumble was, because I realized, oh no, I burnt this card. Like, I can't play this hand again. The Cinderella story of the underdog who finally wins the big one, it's been played now. I had it in Montreal. I had it here in Riyadh. You can't ask them to come along a third time at that point. Because even in reality, it was actually like the 9th or 10th time at that point. But, that story really getting to marinate and really being the crux of the story and the focal point of the story going into the match, I'm like, you can't tell that story again because, they just won't buy it again. They've already been on board, and they already, you can only ask them to come on the train for so long. And that's why, I mean what I say when I'm talking about the ride or dies, because for as much as, I like to pretend that it didn't bother me at all, some of the fans turning their backs or getting fed up with me or my story or whatever, it hurt. And the fans that didn't jump off, like, that means a lot to me. The ride or die fans that stayed, it means a lot to me. And there's a part of me that, my feelings are or were very hurt by these fans that are turning their backs on me. But at the same time, part of me kind of understood it, because it's like, how many times can I ask them to stay and come up short? But that didn't make, that's when I really think about it. That's when I access what I call higher plane Sammy, when I, think on a more deeper and spiritual level. But on the surface, I'm just like anyone else. I get my feelings hurt when I devote my entire life to trying to win for these people. And then half of them are jumping off board and going like, oh, we're done. Like, that hurts, man. That hurts. That really hurts. Cause I gave, I have my whole thing is my connection with the fans. Like, some people, their thing is this or that, or they're cool, or they're, whatever, counterculture, or everybody's got their little thing. My thing was the fans and the connection with the fans. So to lose half of them or whatever, man, I don't know. I like to pretend I don't care, and I like to pretend like, oh, go ahead, boo if you want to boo. Think I care? I got my ride or dies. But man, I can't sit here and pretend it doesn't hurt. But it hurts a little less now that I got this,
Sammy, in the moment that you pinned Cody Rhodes and became the undisputed WWE champion, shortly after, you had an interview with Byron Saxton, and all of us who were sitting watching you, we were thinking back, to the moment that Sami Zayn signed with WWE, to the moment when Sami Zayn became NXT champion, to your WrestleMania match with Johnny Knoxville, to when you were fighting WWE conspiracies, to Montreal, to the honorary use, like, all of these moments just came rushing back that we got to share with you. But when you won the title, what moments were you thinking about?
I don't think I was thinking about anything too specific. I was like, over what, it's a really strange thing. And I could give you a long-winded answer about what you feel when you reach a goal like that. And it's very complicated. It's not at all what you think it is. Like, I watched the guys win the Stanley Cup, and they're just like, yeah. They're just all smiles, and they're just jumping up, and it's like pure elation. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what it'll be like. And it wasn't like that at all. Like, you get hit with sadness and gratitude and happy. You get hit with like a million things. And there's so much that your brain can't process it all. So it almost like shuts down for a second. And then none of it feels real. And then it comes in like these waves of different emotions. So it's so complicated. I can't begin to totally explain it. But there wasn't a single moment that came to mind. For me, it was more of the big picture thing. Like when you start saying about all those iterations of me since I put pen to paper with WWE, I just think to myself, man, what a great career. And I did make myself a little sick with the pressure I put myself to win this. But I was always saying, even if I never won it, what a career I've had. There are people who've won the championship multiple times. And if I may be so arrogant as to say, I still think a lot of them still didn't have the career I had in terms of these things that are just these chapters that were so memorable or that touched people or that, I don't know, they're just like special and they were good, It's not all about the championship. It's not. Although it kind of is too.
Now it is. Now it is.
Now,
it can
now
be
now. Now. But I had to be okay with the fact that, look, there are champions. There are multiple time world champions who never got to tell a story like the Bloodline story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that never got to, even with a championship, without championship, they never got to touch people in that kind of way and to like rock the foundation of the business like that. Like that was a really special thing. And I'm just picking one. I think my time at NXT was also incredibly special, like building a brand, you know what I mean? And being a huge part of that. And just this, like, I don't know, I've done a lot of great things. I'm really, really, really proud of all of it. And then when you start putting it all together, you're like, wow, just wow. I'm just floored, but it's not an arrogant thing. It's like a gratitude thing. I'm like, man, I can't believe I had this career and it ended with it. And it didn't even end.
Right.
But I got here. It's not even over, but it's like, I did it. I can't believe it. I did all that great stuff and I still did this too. Wow.
I love the way that you frame that, Megan, that you frame that question, because it is true. And I feel like if you track your career in WWE, it's full maybe more than anybody else of moments that were never guaranteed and just as easily could not have happened. I don't think people really remember when you were signed to NXT that guys like you, the independent guys of the world, were not really getting signed to WWE. The WWE wasn't looking at independent wrestlers, and those were kind of this other thing over here, and that you were one of the people that opened that door. I think about you coming to the main roster and having that match with John Cena, except you blew out your shoulder in the entrance and like you weren't able to capitalize on it. You know what I mean? And that could have been the step back. I think of all these things, and the WrestleMania match like you just brought up with Johnny Knoxville, which for a lot of people would have been like, oh man, I got to do this celebrity match, but you guys bring the house down. And then you go into the Bloodline and you look at the reality, and this struck me as, somebody who was a unashamed, super fan of the Bloodline story. The fact that you look at the landscape of WWE in 2026, in this moment, Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn are the two top champions.
Yeah, that's not lost on me,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's wild, man.
Well, there's that. And like you're bringing up something interesting. And it's become very cliche to say like, this was my dream. The WWE Championship, the WrestleMania main events, the Grand Slam, all of that. This was my dream. But if I'm being totally honest, you can't even say that it's a dream, because I almost look like dreams as like, they're almost goals that you can work to and attain. I would say they were more like fantasies in that I couldn't even dream of them because they were unfathomable. When I was breaking into wrestling, the people that looked like me, it did not exist in the wrestling business. So I can't even pretend to say like, yeah, I'll get there. It didn't exist. It wasn't a possibility. Winning just if I just made it to WWE, I swear, I kid you not. At one point, I remember when I was starting, I said to myself, if I just set my foot in a WWE ring, then I'll have lived the dream. I'll have done it. That was the extent of like my goal. Of course, there was this other stuff, but it was so fantastical. It was so like unfathomable that I don't even say dream. I say fantasy. It's beyond reality. It was not something that was like an available option to even dream about, to even put yourself in those shoes. That's how unattainable it seemed. So to come here and do what I've done, like just from a achievement perspective, is absolutely mind-boggling. But for me, when Megan, when you ask that question, for me, when I think of the common thread of some of those things, like the Knoxville match, the NXT time, the match with Nakamura, the story with Kevin, the story with the Bloodline, all that stuff. I swear, I don't know when I got this thought, but I just thought, man, these stories are also, first of all, the range is pretty significant between a lot of them, but they're just so not like wrestling stories I grew up watching, because I'm really not a character like the characters I grew up watching. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of this when I did the promo or like some interview or something with Cody. You know, you're talking about like, you're my friend and my feelings are hurt and stuff like that. And it just doesn't sound like what you heard wrestlers and WWE superstars of the past say, but like it's real and it's honest and everybody could hang their hat. And there's like a vulnerability or a sensibility and a sensitivity like mixed with that aggression. And because I can, you know, still have those matches and back it up and turn it up when it's time to turn it up. But there's just like a depth of texture and emotion to some of these stories that I think, like, you know, I hope, and maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I'm blowing my own head up bigger than it needs to be right now. But I feel like when it's all said and done, and if and when my career is ever looked back upon, I think only later will you start to see like, man, there was quite a, you know, this really ran the gambit here. Like it really, there was a lot of range here and there was a lot of complexity here. And you never really get to take it all in because it's always moving from one thing to the next. But when I actually stop and think about it, and trust me, winning the WWE Championship will make you stop and think about it at some point. So, you know, once I won it, I got to stop and think about the ride, and I'm just like, man, the highs, the lows, and the quality of these stories and the quality of these matches, like what a distinct and unique kind of career. I don't know. I'm just, man, I don't know.
No, it's remarkable. It's remarkable, and it's because these are relatable, personal stories, and they're based in relationships, and they feel real. We just watched Monday Night Raw. Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar was made official for SummerSlam. Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. Roman chose, or Roman accepted Seth Rollins' challenge. Are you, when Obafemi shows up and goes, I challenge you, Brock Lesnar, do you wipe the sweat off your brow a little bit? It's not Sammy and Oba at SummerSlam?
You know, I'll be honest. This is not to say I'm looking past Oba whatsoever. Trust me. But my head was more wrapped up in just like, hey, can I not get a minute? You know, like, can I just get a second here? You know, 10 plus years chasing this. Can I have just one moment? But no, of course, you have to rise to the occasion. I don't care who the challenger is. I don't care if it's Brock. I don't care if it's Roman. I don't care if it's Oba. Like, I've been in the ring with monsters. I'm not saying it would be a cakewalk, but, you know, I'm not going to back down either. I'm not like, you know, I'm really, you know, I don't mean to sound like bravado here. I'm not trying to make myself seem more courageous than I am. He is very imposing, there's no doubt, but I don't care who it is. That's the thing about being WWE champion. Like, you kind of have to, you know, you got to. Was I a little relieved? Like, maybe, yeah, sure. You know, sure. But like whoever, that's got to be part of it. It's part of the game. That's what you want.
Yeah.
To be a fighting champion.
Which is
right?
why I don't understand why Cody gets so bent out of shape when I'm like, you know, Golden Boy. Like, that's what you want. That's what you want. That's what you want. And now, like, now it's mine. So, like, I live up to that in the same respect. Like any and all comers, yeah, I can't back down. No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to. We would love
to
keep
see Oprah going off with Brock. That's nice.
We would love to keep you all night. But you got that fancy convertible you got to get back
Yes, you do.
to ride on home with that WWE championship in the passenger seat, cruising together. Sammy, really, sincerely, congratulations. This is such as somebody who has followed you from far before WWE, it is so cool to see it happen. Congratulations, man.
Congrats, Sammy.
What a moment.
I dare say maybe Sam Roberts, a ride or die.
Sam Roberts is absolutely, you know this to be true. You know this to be true. Sam Roberts is a ride or die. Day one. Appreciate your time, champ.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Megan. Appreciate you guys.